Welcome back to the Work in Progress podcast, where we are talking all about human development in tech. Today, I have a guest with me who is a co-founder of the Tech Academy, where I spoke last year, towards the end of the year. But yeah, I have Erik Gross with me, or he started Tech Academy because he couldn't find junior developers and decided to train them himself. Before opening the Tech Academy and learning tech, Erik was a Navy nuclear reactor operator and electronics engineer, or instructor rather. Then after nearly 2 decades in sales, yes, sales, he had a blunt conversation with a friend who sort of reminded him about his tech roots. He has since authored 12 textbooks, one of which we might talk a little bit about today. And he has worked at all sorts of companies. Welcome, Erik. Would you like to add anything to that long list of things that you've done?
Not really. You covered a lot. I will say that I first started coding when I was 11. And so while I
Okay.
spent a bunch of time in the Navy and went deep into digital technology then, I actually learned most of the fundamentals one wonderful afternoon with my dad when I was 11 years old. And that planted a seed that didn't come to fruition for 30 years. But I'm really, really glad that that seed got planted.
Yeah. So did you dabble with it throughout your time then, or did you just have that one day and then you were
Oh,
like,
no,
wait, I really enjoyed that?
I went hardcore into it. Like
Okay.
my dad came home with a VIC 20 and the more advanced in years in your audience will recognize that name. A VIC-20 was the first personal computer to sell a million copies or a million units back in the very early '80s. Came from a Canadian company called Commodore, and
Yeah.
they were $200 a pop. They were like the first sort of mass market success in the computer world. And I don't know how my dad afforded one, but he did. Brought it home, plugged it in, showed me how it worked, but then he did something really cool. I've told this story 1,000 times because it's such a wonderful day. He unplugged it, turned it over, took the back off, and then for the next hour taught me everything about the internals of a computer. And so then it was all the computer magazines and going to the computer lab in our school and taking every computer class I could. And I was dove in hardcore to computers. And then when I went in the Navy, that's when I found out there's a whole nother side of it, which is how do they build the actual individual components inside those things? How does digital circuitry work? How does
Hmm.
Boolean logic work? How does the CPU work on a fundamental level? And so we covered all that stuff. But then 6 years later, I got out of the Navy and been looking at machines for way too long, looking at reactor plant control panels and, got the 185 megawatt nuclear reactor I'm responsible for. And I was all machined out for a while. So I decided to go a whole other route and go into sales. So, yeah, I did work in sales for a long time, but it's wild. I wrote about this in the most recent book that I just finished, that everywhere I went, I ended up being the tech guy. I
Hmm.
didn't have that role officially, but I implemented, like, enterprise resource planning systems or developed one of the first, uh, retail websites for sunglass sales on the internet back in, like, 96, 97, like, way back in the
Yeah.
antiquities, right? So I was always doing the tech stuff. But then, yeah, as you referred, to pretty well, I had a rather blunt conversation with uh, a guy I really respected who I wasn't doing well at the time, economically, like life wise. And he basically just called me out on it and said, like, you've got to change something. And then in a car ride with my friend Jack Stanley, who ended up being the co-founder of the Tech Academy, he just started picking my brain about what do you know? Like, what are you smart at? What are you good at? And I suddenly remembered that, oh, I've been programming with computers since I was 11. He looked at me like I was an idiot because I was, and said, "Well, why aren't you doing that?" And that turned into like a really great career as a technologist and architect and engineer, co-founder of the Tech Academy. And I think I tried to calculate it. I think I've delivered personal one-on-one instruction or in a group setting to 4,000 people over the last 15 years.
Whoa.
So it
That's a lot.
obviously it woke something up in me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So those two conversations is really what switched you into tech again.
yeah,
Did you work in tech for a little while before you started the Tech Academy,
I,
or
I did.
did you just realize
I did. No,
immediately?
I landed a really good job right away. I mean, there's a whole story there, which again, I finally laid out in explicit detail in a book called The Uncommon Engineer, which I just finished writing about 2 weeks ago. But
Nice.
I, yeah, I'll cut it short and say in between that conversation with my friend Jack, again, who's now the co-founder of the Tech Academy, and about 3 weeks later, there were many, many late nights and catching up on like a couple decades worth of like not having been intimately connected with the technology industry. But I ended up
Yeah.
like getting my first job and it doubled my income with one job. I went, oh. And so I just aggressively leaned into that. And eventually, because people started to find out, hey, you're doing technology, picked up side gigs, like little
Mhm.
side projects. And that's when I started reaching out for like, well, can I find some junior developers to help me with some of the more fundamental aspects once I've designed the system for whatever client I might have, right? And I found it really, really hard to find entry level software developers. And that's when I went that and the fact that my I just found out about boot camps. They had only started 6 months before, like in the
I was gonna say
summer of
this was a while
2012.
ago that you started Tech Academy, right? Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you.
Yeah, in the summer of 2012, there was
Okay.
a group of engineers down in the San Francisco Bay Area who, as an experiment, took about a dozen of their friends and said, "Hey, if you'll give us the summer, we'll help try to get you into tech." And they
Mhm.
spent that summer just pouring everything they could into these people, and out of the 12 people, 11 of them landed jobs, and they landed jobs for well over $100,000 a year, which in San Francisco is basically poverty level, but at least they got into the tech industry, right? And I
Yeah.
found out about this the next spring, in the spring of 2013, and that's when I went, "Oh, I can't find junior developers. I was an instructor in the Navy. I love technology. Let me see what can come out of this." And that's how the Tech Academy was born.
Yeah, and you were telling me earlier that you help a lot with the curriculum even still, right?
Yeah, we decided right from the beginning, once we got it off the ground, Jack and I, that I needed to be a working developer the whole
Mhm.
time and have. There've been periods where I've really intensively worked at the school and periods where I'm away from it except for contribution on curriculum. But the
Mhm.
main thing was that I wanted to always be out there as a working engineer so that when I would create or review curriculum, I'd know what the industry needs and wants, what the
Yeah.
modern practices were. No, it's one of the main challenges I find with traditional academic education. It has a lot of plus points. There's a depth of theory you can go into that makes you really valuable in many ways, but it's so hard to change curriculum in a university or college environment that
Yeah.
they can't keep up to speed. Well, we can, but that means I need to keep up to speed and constantly out there working and seeing all the new trends and using them and figuring out what's going to stick and what's just going to go away.
Yeah, and, you were talking a little bit with me earlier too about, like, staying up to date, like, we can go 2 ways with this, so let
Yeah.
me know which way you wanna go, but we talked a little bit about using AI,
Yeah.
both as a new developer and as, like, someone who's actively working,
Yeah.
to your point, and then we also talked about your book, so I don't know which way you wanna go
Let's talk about
because
AI and
okay,
absolutely, speak to the book, whatever you like to do. But on the AI
yeah,
thing, I mean, it's just I feel a responsibility to at least share what I've learned about this use because I was hard in on AI. Like I use it literally every single day. But
same,
because I'm also helping people break into technology, I know the good and the bad about using AI right at the beginning of your learning journey when you're trying to figure out how to code. And there's no getting away from it, right? We had to confront this at the school. Like people aren't going to stop using AI. It's just
yeah,
it's prevalent now, right? But here's what I found to be true about using generative AI, a Chat GPT or a Claude or whatever in any professional domain, is that it really is a garbage in, garbage out kind of system. As
mhm,
refined as they're getting, and they're getting very, very good, your ability to be a domain expert in the area that you're wanting it to assist you in is critical for getting good results. But more importantly, for being able to judge whether or not the result it gave you is actually right. And again, they're getting better and better and better. They're very sophisticated right now, but they can't think. All they can do is predict the next most logical series of words or numbers or symbols based on
right,
the words or numbers or symbols you gave it. That they're just text prediction machines is all they are, but they're very good and they look like they think, right? But if you don't have the domain expertise to evaluate what it gives you, then you're dangerous. You can just grab something, not be able to really ascertain its quality level or its impact on the system that you're going to shove it into, and it'll have disastrous effects. Or at the very least, you'll be tracing bugs until 3 in the morning, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
on the flip side of it, if at the early part of your journey, and now we're going to like talk about technology specifically, if in the early part of your journey you're learning, of course, the basic syntax of language and how, the basic elements of a computer program and everything. But if you learn how to think like a computer, if you learn how to think like an engineer, and then have a little bit of domain expertise, some practical, like getting your hands dirty coding. Now, when you go to the AI and you ask it a question, you're able to frame it in a context that's very tightly bound and that can only be articulated if you already understand those fundamentals of how the nature of a digital computer, the nature of how any program needs to be put together, how to articulate the problem statement that you're trying to get its help in. Then
Mhm.
when you do that and get a result out, you can look at it and go, yeah, that makes sense. No, that's pure hallucination. That actually had nothing to do with what I said. And you can refine the way you tell it what to do. Come right back and say, perhaps I wasn't clear enough on this point. I tend to be very polite to my AIs. I've watched way too many sci-fi movies. When
Yeah,
this,
I say please and thank you.
yes, when the singularity comes, I want to remember me as the guy who said please and thank you, right? But
Exactly.
you can reframe what you're saying and go, okay, you got most of this right. Here's a little more context and why this one part doesn't fit. The whole point is you can't have that kind of a conversation with a generative AI until you've learned the fundamentals. And so when I
Yeah.
think about like how to use AI while you're learning to code versus once you do know how to code, the main use at those early periods is just explain it like I'm five. Like
Yeah.
here you are, and you're doing whatever training material you're going through, whether it's the Tech Academy, a very formalized, really proven boot camp, or you're doing self study or whatever it is. You're going through and you're getting your hands dirty, and then you hit a word you don't understand, or a
Mhm.
specific like engineering problem that you're trying to solve, and you're still awash in all the sea of confusion and pressure because you're so early in your learning journey. It's perfect to go to AI and not say, "Here's my coding challenge, solve it," but say, I'm trying to solve a coding challenge that looks like this. Tell me how to think with it. Don't tell me the answer. Tell me how to approach it. What are the principles involved? Because it's so much more important. I have this thing, I never memorize syntax, the syntax of a specific language. And I can write in, I don't know, a dozen different languages. And people say, okay, how do you write that out? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm not going to memorize syntax. What I do understand is that there's 5 fundamental elements to any computer program: an entrance point, variables, control and branching statements, subprograms, and an exit point. Those are the
Mhm.
5 elements no matter what language you're using. And so when I'm confronting an engineering problem, I know whether I'm dealing with a control and branching issue or a subprogram issue. Where am I thinking with that path of execution? Like, then I can look it up. How do I write a subprogram in this language? How do I call another subprogram? How do I deal with nested or iterative, like, um, recursive subprograms, right? But I'm not going to
Mhm.
memorize the syntax on that, right? The principles behind it are much more important. And so in the early part of your journey, if you're using AI to think for you, then you're really harming yourself. But if instead you say, here's what I'm trying to solve, tell me how to think with it. What are the fundamental principles underneath? And it generally does a really good job of saying, oh, while you might be looking at this specific like exercise you were told to do, this is an example of this category of work that a computer can do. And these are the things you need to think with going into it. And then if you're in a much better position to solve it. But don't just give it to it and say, hey, solve this for me. That's like asking the smart kid right next to you at school, hey, do my homework for me.
Yeah, you never learn when
Yeah.
you cheat.
I don't want a mechanical engineer who followed that method to build a
Mhm.
bridge that I'm going to drive over. Right.
Yes.
Anyway, so those
Yeah,
are my
and
thoughts
really
on like when you're at the early part of your journey, how to really use AI effectively.
I like that a lot because you're really setting people up for success. I've been wondering about this because AI was starting to become popular in the development experience as I was, starting my own software engineering
Yeah.
career, um, but I had already learned the fundamentals that I had
Right.
so I was like, "How does it work whenever you're brand new?" So
Yeah.
and I do still ask it, like, I'm actually in the middle of troubleshooting, a CD pipeline.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Okay, like, what's going on here? Help me understand."
Mhm.
So I really appreciate that you are encouraging people to, yeah, set themselves up for success for the long
Yeah.
term. Garbage in,
Yeah.
garbage out. That's great.
But once you get past that point, when you do understand those fundamentals and you've got some experience under your belt, It's an unbelievable game changer.
Yeah.
Claude from Anthropic. I just
I'm going
cannot
so fast.
I can't say enough about Claude. It is I stopped using ChatGPT about 6 months ago because every time I would go to some engineering use case and pop into the Claude, I'd be like, there's just and that was before they had I'm dating myself because it's like March of 2026, right? Sonnet, Opus 4.6 came out a few weeks ago, and
Mhm,
and that was like, boom, like, it saves me hours and hours and hours every single day. I get about 3 to
mhm,
4 days worth of work in some cases done in one day because I because of how rapidly it can do the stuff that I would rather just offload that's manual, or because it helps me think through an engineering problem. I'm still gonna have to decide on the right architecture. I've got to form my own opinion. I can't just take what it says, but very often it'll make me think of things. I'm like, "Oh, that's right. I didn't think about that. How does that factor in?" So, I'll never let it I'm not just gonna take exactly what it says, but it's an unbelievable companion as you're working through these engineering problems. I love it.
I think that's absolutely the right word too, is companion, because, like, I've been using it a lot to pair program and be like, "Well, what do you
Mhm.
think about this?" Or, like
Mhm.
exactly, like, "Tell me about let's think through some other alternatives."
Yeah. What are the
And
edge
sometimes
cases I'm not
come up
thinking
with
of?
some
You know?
What's that?
What are the edge cases I'm not thinking of? And they're bam, bam, bam,
Exactly.
like, "Oh, I'm glad I said something." Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely does speed it up. I've been using Claude as well, and also highly recommend.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think we may have already covered this, but is there anything else, that you can think of with, like, AI becoming so much more popular and with the speed of technology currently that you are sort of baking into Tech Academy courses and curriculum?
Yeah, we first created our own standalone, like, AI developer boot camp, and but then found that, that wasn't enough, and so we tacked on to the end of every boot camp because we have 12 boot camps now, right? All
I was
kinds of
gonna ask you
disciplines,
that, yeah.
whether it's, data science or C# developer, Python developer, UI, UX, at the tail end of every single one of them. Again, after they've learned the fundamentals, we have
Mhm.
a whole sort of mini class, or section on how to use AI effectively as a developer. Because at that point, they're towards the end, they've gone through their live project, they've gotten their hands dirty, they've been part of a working development team. Now is when I would prefer to introduce them to how to use AI rather than use it early on as a crutch and miss out on that valuable, like, building that understanding. So yeah,
Yeah.
it totally changed how we do things, not in a fundamental way, but in a, again, give them that data right at the end.
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense. And actually, I have another question for you
Yeah.
too, kind of jumping off of that. I've been asked a few times recently about the current job market.
Yeah.
And I know that you are actively in the job market, like not in the job market, but
Yeah.
you are actively working. How have you seen your folks, like, are they hireable? I assume so since you're doing the fundamentals and the AI at the end.
Yeah.
But how are you feeling about the job market? Like, how are you instructing your folks to
Whoo!
go
It's
for it? I know
interesting.
it's a
No,
big one.
I love this one because I have to separate out 2 different viewpoints in my mind because
Mhm.
here I am, like, I've been doing this for a long time. My job search is gonna be different in many ways,
Yeah.
but it's still a job search, right? Because again, I've always been a working developer, right? Um,
Mhm.
and had to go through the job search process many, many times. So, 1, yeah, our graduates are still doing really well. It's still hard work to get a job. Uh,
Mhm.
but, said this, I've given a lot of seminars on how to break into tech and how to keep getting jobs, after you've broken in. It's no different when you've been in the industry for decades. I
Yeah.
generally, when I have to, apply for a job, I send out between 80 and 100 applications within the first 48 hours. Like, I'm just aggressive as heck, and then it's 20 a day and just will not stop. Like, the sheer volume, the amount of reach you have to extend outward from yourself to get that inward reach back. It's just huge no matter where you are in the industry. And so the things we found true when we started the school are the absolute true things that help people get hired now, all these years later, right? 13 some
Mhm.
odd years later, which is, it's, you have to be indomitable. You cannot give up. Some people it's a couple of weeks after they hit the job placement course and they get out there and they just like, and something happens. Some people, it can be a few months. But what we've seen is you will always get hired if you simply don't stop. And that
Mhm.
it's easier said than done. It can be very demoralizing. It involves a lot of mental toughness. But
Mhm.
I won't ever ask anybody to do anything I'm not willing to do. And I'm willing to exert that much effort when I find myself in need of a job. And it happened. I lost my job twice in the middle of COVID. It
Yeah.
was brutal, right? And then a year and a half ago, huge restructuring at a company, and they
Mhm.
canceled the entire service that I and my team were delivering. We're not going to sell that anymore. See you later, right?
Yeah.
And so having been through either like I have notice or I have 10 minutes notice to be on the job market, I'm completely willing to put everything I have into it. That's what we teach at the school. It worked minute one when we launched, and it still works now. And so, yeah, it might be a challenging job market, but it's a tenacity, which is what you need to be an engineer and track down problems. That just
Yeah. True.
refusal to stop.
Yeah, it's fun when you I like to think about, like, if you're not having fun digging in and, like, getting into the nitty-gritty, then you might need to rethink things a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah. The way I've always felt is that elation when you finally figure it out. If it
Yes.
balances out it's 1 a.m. I've been beating my head against this. Why won't it work? When you finally do, if that elation outweighs all of that, you have
Oh,
a
yeah.
beautiful equation. If it
Yeah.
doesn't, if
I
you're like, well, I guess I figured it out. Yeah, you're right. You have some thinking to do.
It's not gonna be a great existence.
Nope.
Well, wonderful. Do you want to jump into sharing a little bit more about, I guess, both your experience as an architect and
Yeah.
engineer long term and writing your book?
Yeah, I really do. I do write about this in the book, and again, it'll be out in about 3 weeks. And
Okay.
it's called The Uncommon Engineer. I had to come up with a catchy name, but I
You'll
am
have to get me a
uncommon.
link whenever it's out.
What's that?
You'll have to get me a link whenever it's out so I
Yes.
can put it in
Oh,
here.
absolutely. I am a bit uncommon. I'm a bit weird, and I'm an engineer, so I figured it's an appropriate title. But
Excellent.
I'll tell the short version of this. There was a moment when I was going through my nuclear power training where I had done like a year and a half worth of theory, like boot camp, 6 months of electronics school at like 70 hours a week of study. And then 6 months of nuclear power school. So electronics and then nuclear power, again, about 60 to 70 hours a week of study. So in a period of a year, like just crammed full of really awesome data, but it was all theory. There was no
Yeah.
practical application. And so the Navy sent me to Idaho, where they have a submarine in the middle of the desert in Idaho, fully
Oh.
working submarine, right? Now it doesn't go anywhere. It's in a big old concrete pit, but there's a submarine out there. And your job is to take this big book that has like requirements for every single one of the systems inside that boat. Like there are
Mhm.
80 systems inside the boat that you have to learn inside and out. And every single time you've studied one and you think you know it well, you have to go to an instructor and they'll open up the book and they'll look at any aspect of that system and do a checkout with you and ask you questions about
Mhm.
to gauge your understanding. And if you don't pass it, you're back to studying. And it was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough. I remember though, I'd gotten through checkouts on about 18 of the 80 systems, and I'm just feeling the pressure. I don't know about you, but I cannot stand it when like internally when I don't understand. When there's a
Yep.
system that especially one I'm going to be responsible for, and especially a system that well, it's the whole boat, and if I don't do my part, we all die, right?
Yeah, it's important.
No joke. Like I'm going to be the nuclear reactor
Yeah,
operator on this thing,
say
right?
it lightly.
And so I don't like it when I don't understand, but I would find I'd learn one system and be like, okay, I think I got that. I have no idea how it relates to anything else. And then I'll learn another one. Okay, I kind of got that. Again, I have no idea how it relates to anything else. And so I've got this
Mhm.
sort of like trying to pull things together, and it was very difficult mentally. And then one day I'm on my like 19th system. It was a very boring system. It's called the pure water storage system. It's where they'll, desalinate water and they'll provide it throughout the ship so you can drink it. Pure water
Mhm.
storage system. But here I am, and so far I've traced like the actual tank. Like I put my hands on the tank, and okay, there's the valve and a pump, and then I'm tracing all the places it goes throughout the ship. And I remember I got to this one. bulkhead, like a wall. They call it a bulkhead in the Navy. And here's the pipe going through the bulkhead for my system I'm studying right now. And I'm putting my hands on it and I'm tracing through. And then I pause and I realized I was standing utterly still. And I didn't know why. It's because I recognized the pipe right next to it and what system it was for. And then
Huh?
this electrical conduit right next to it and what system it was for. And all of the ones going through the bulkhead at this point, I'm like, I know what all those are for. And then everything just went, and
Like
the
it all
whole
clicked.
system just clicked. It
Yeah.
synthesized into a whole thing composed of these separate elements. I could see how a change in one system would affect another. Right.
Mhm.
And so that was the first time I didn't have the word for it, that systems architecture, systems
Uh-huh.
engineering just got me lit up like an atomic bomb. I shouldn't say that because I was a nuclear reactor operator. Okay, lit up like the sun, which is itself
There we go.
a constantly firing off atomic bomb. What are you going to do? Okay. This is the danger of talking about nuclear power. But it was a pivotal moment. Like that whole concept of architecture just really grabbed a hold of me. And so flash forward, as I've been a working engineer, problems and challenges of overall system architecture have always been fascinating to me. And so there are about 4 or 5 elements of how I approach engineering or learning new technology or troubleshooting problems inside of a working system that time and time again over the decades have always come through for me. And I've never really been able to communicate them all in one place succinctly the way I wanted to. And so I had a couple very busy nights after I let this rattle around my head for months, if not a couple of years, where I just sat down and wrote this book, The Uncommon Engineer. And so in there, I lay out like the exact reason why I can approach problems that have a high degree of complexity and where you can't see a path to a solution. And I'm utterly confident always that I'll arrive at a solution. How did I figure that out? Like, what's the method of using your mind? And by the way, on that one, it turns out I've been doing it for decades, thought I was really weird in how I did it. And then I found a book 2 years ago where this guy in 1949 or whatever did a bunch of research and laid out the exact method I'd been using. He described the way I was using my mind. I went, okay, one, it's nice to know I'm like I'm not the only
You're not
weird one out there. Two, I want everyone to read this book. So I talk about that
Yeah.
in The Uncommon Engineer, right? But
Okay,
that,
so it's
yeah,
listed there.
yeah. Anyway, there's a lot more, but that got me really excited because I was finally able to communicate some of the things that really helped me to prosper in my career.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
that's what that is.
amazing. Yeah. And I think you told me that you wrote it or like you're putting it out there on your own, so like self-published, is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
It's one of the
where
first things I've written purely as me, right? Most of the things I
okay.
co-write with Jack, we work phenomenally together, but this really was Erik, the engineer and architect, and how he's weird and why that's a good thing. That's what
Weird is good.
that's what I was
Weird
trying
is
to get
good. I like it. Great. So then, with it being self-published, I'm not familiar with all of that, but like
Yeah.
where will your book be available? I'll link to it, of course, but like
Oh,
just
yeah.
in case someone's reading this later.
Again, it helps being a technologist. I'm just gonna spin up my own website and sell it myself.
Nice. Do you know what
So,
it is? It theuncommonengineer.com?
it absolutely is. I could not believe that
Love it.
URL was available. Yeah.
Well, it's like it was meant to be.
Yep.
Something that I like to ask at the end of all of our episodes, as we wind down is, if people remember absolutely nothing else from this conversation but one thing, what would you like people to walk away with?
I want them to understand that if they have the slightest interest in technology, in problem solving, in computers, or in helping people, and they like the technical area at all, to please consider this reality. As long as you can read, write, and do basic math, you can learn to code and be a really successful technologist. And that's how we built the school. It was not built to be in some ivory tower. It wasn't built. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine today, who is a professional tutor, and he's helping
Mhm.
some young man who wants to go into a computer science degree and is being given this syllabus of unbelievably advanced math.
Yeah.
Advanced math has nothing to do with computer programming. Nothing. End of story. As long, again, if you can read, write, and do basic arithmetic, you can get into technology. You can do a variety of ways, but we're very proud of the way we've given that path, a cleanly defined path at the Tech Academy. So please give it a shot if there's any interest in technology and you meet that qualification. Whatever method you choose, look into it. It's an unbelievable career.
And I wish someone had told me that a lot sooner. So thank you for that message. I think there are definitely people out there who need to hear it. So I appreciate that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming and sharing all of your stories and your experience with us and the Tech Academy.
Yeah,
So
my pleasure.
thank
Absolutely love it.
thank you so much.
And thank you, by the way, for speaking at the school. Like we
Yeah.
really, I just want to say personally, we really appreciate that. It was so important to Jack and I when we put this thing together that they not just hear from us. We wanted them to hear
Hmm.
a wide variety of people in and around the industry. So again, personally, it means a lot that you were taking your time to speak to our students. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun and they were so wonderful. So thank you. Yeah. That's it for this commit of the Work in Progress podcast. If you liked it, please hit follow, leave a review, or share it with another human who's figuring things out too. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and keep showing up, even if it's still a draft. Until next time, keep iterating.